Hi, I'm Rick Dior, and today we're going to start a series on funk drumming. And I did a little complicated demo there of a lot of beat displacement, and that's kind of where we're at today. Very complicated, very notey, technical. But in the beginning, it was much simpler. So if you go way back in the day, and you listen to drummers like Earl Palmer, or the great Memphis Al Jackson, Tiki Fullwood with Parliament Funkadelic, Harvey Mason with Herbie Hancock, David Garibaldi with Tower Power. That's a little more complicated. Of course, the great Bernard Purdie. All these guys were very active when I was a kid in the 70s and 80s. So those were really big influences on me. And I would constantly listen to records they were on. Everything from Parliament Funkadelic to even Steely Dan with Bernard Purdie. Lots and lots of Herbie Hancock, Thrust, that record Chameleon. Also a lot of Meters with Ziggy. So these records really influenced the way I played. And of course, the greatest of the influences for most of those guys, and me as well, was Clyde Stubblefield. So I started out with that little James Brown kind of feel, but a little more modernized. And that's a displaced note. So very funky, and those guys had such a great feel. Most of the time, when I was able to see these guys play live, it was from a distance. So the first time I saw a great funk drummer play very close was when I played with Aretha Franklin, and Bernard Purdie was playing drums. I was playing hand drums and vibes and timpani. I was right behind him, which was great. And I saw a lot of the little nuances he did. And I was pretty young at the time, in my early 20s. So I was able to really, appreciate that, but also just being right there helped a lot. Now, when I was young and coming up, there weren't a lot of books that were available. But later on, when I was in high school, a few books came out in the late 70s. One of them was this Chet Doboe book, which was called The Funk Drumming Workbook. I've lost my cover because it's so old. So this book is out of print, as far as I can tell, but it's a great book, and if you could find it online, you'll be really happy to have it. What I'm going to do in this series is record all 15 of the solos from this book, and the rest of the book is fantastic as well. So we'll talk in this series about this book, this Doboe book, and how to approach it and how it can help improve your funk drumming, as well as some particular techniques, hi-hat techniques, and we'll talk about those today. One of the big ones I want to start out with is ways to manipulate the hi-hat that are going to sound less rock and more funk. So we'll start out with that first. Funk drumming generally has a much lighter hi-hat than rock drumming. So in rock drumming, where you would usually use the shaft of the stick like this, funk drumming is going to have more of a shaft tip feel. So that really lends itself to light playing. That's a shaft tip motion where you're using the shaft on the hi-hat and then the tip like this. So what you end up with is sort of a quarter note feel. And then you're filling in those notes in between with the tip. So when you're doing that motion, it's possible to sneak a lot of little ghost notes in there like this. It's also possible to make the beat more malleable In other words, it's elastic. So if you use the right relaxed technique, you can bend that hi-hat rhythm to your will. So you can make it straight like this, or bouncy. So there's a lot of benefits to that technique. The other technique is the push-pull technique, which is really, really useful for quicker tempos. So that looks like this. And if you use a right-hand hi-hat like I do, it makes it even better. So you can play very quickly and quietly. Now, you can also stretch the beat with that, everything from straight to bounce. And when you move at a slower tempo, you can get some really nice feels with that. So you can change the distance between the notes by using your fingers like that. So all these little techniques work their way into funk drumming to give you that sound. The other thing you need to be really, really cognizant of are your accents. So certain notes will be accented, other notes will be ghosted. So typically a rock groove would look like this. Very clean, not a lot of ghosting, all right? But when you play funk, there's a lot of little snare drum notes that go into that. So you see all those little snare drum notes? And on top of that, I'll do some rim shots. Now it helps to use a really sharp, powerful snare drum with a lot of pop, like this Peavey Radial 1000 drum that I showed you guys recently. This drum almost has a rim shot sound naturally. And I'm not playing hard, I'm playing actually traditional grip here, and a lot of times I'll play matched. When I play louder, when I play rock or funk. So that's something to consider. If you play 1,000 backbeats like this, it's going to wear out your thumb there playing traditional. So you need to learn to play match grip as well. So we'll go through these solos using all these different hi-hat techniques in this series. It'll be probably 15 different videos when I'm going to do all 15 solos. So this is the longest one by far. So the first solo here is on page 45 of the original book, and it's basically listed as solo 1. He does give you tempos, so we have a tempo of 96, quarter note equals 96. The key is a little weird for this book. It's very old, so I'll put that on the screen here so you can see where the toms are in relation to the snare. The snare is on the C line if you're in bass clef, all right, where the bass drum's on the A line, and then the toms are going to be on the G and the E lines in bass clef. So you'll understand that when you look at this diagram here. So we'll start with solo number 1 on page 45, and that's what we'll do in this video, and we'll record the others separately in other videos. These are deceptively difficult, and you need to pay careful attention to all the accents. So all the accented snare notes will be louder than the unaccented ones. That's a lot of the character. You can also add little grace notes, and you'll see me doing this. The first thing you want to do is put your metronome on 16th notes so you can practice playing evenly. So we'll do it at quarter note equals 96, which is the written tempo, and I'll put on the 16ths. 1, 2, 3, 4. So once again, make sure that you're not playing your hi-hat too loud. Also, you'll notice on my opens, I'm not opening the hi-hat all the way. I'm just slightly taking my foot off of it and then using the shaft of the stick to bring out that. You don't want to do this. You don't want to hit it too hard. Very, very lightly there. So the next thing I'll do with my students is try to bounce it. So in other words, almost like a shuffly feel. Towards the triplet. So we'll try that now, but we'll take the 16ths off. This will also be quarter note equals 96. 1, 2, 3, 4. It's okay to add some hi-hat notes or other things, but just pay attention to the main fundamental rhythm. That needs to be there. Also, you'll see I'm adding a lot of ghost notes there, so little drags. Definitely want to do that. Make it a little greasy, you know, add the spices. So then we'll try to do it faster. So let's try it at 110, and we'll put the 16ths back on. So this is challenging. It takes a lot of technique to play these right-handed high notes, hi-hat notes fast. 1, 2, 3, 4. So I hope you enjoyed this first installment of this series. It's going to be a lot of fun for me to do these. It takes me way back to my youth. I used to spend hours practicing these things. And I'd also transcribe. I remember doing Chameleon for the first time, transcribing that and playing with the record. That was so much fun. So I did a lot of these funk things, writing them out. But you could find a lot of them online, but I definitely suggest, if you can, transcribe them. That's how you really learn. You get inside the music. So I'll just play a little for you, go a little faster, and we'll call it a day.